without further ado, I want to turn it over now to Chef Chris Galarza, who is going to do a cooking demonstration for us. Chef Chris Galarza is an entrepreneur. He's an author. He's a public speaker. He's a podcaster. I definitely recommend checking out his podcast. And he's renowned for his work in kitchen electrification. He's the founder and culinary sustainability consultant for Forward Dining Solutions, which is the first and only firm dedicated to creating sustainable and efficient commercial kitchens. He's an expert in electric kitchens. He's a chef that works with clients to sustainably create kitchens that promote healthy, efficient, and equitable working conditions. He's worked on notable projects, including Chatham University's Eden Hall campus, which is the world's first fully self-sustained university campus. He's worked with Microsoft and an all-girls school. And he's also worked for several prestigious establishments, including Carnegie Mellon University and Monterey Bay of Pittsburgh. And he's worked with certified master chefs and culinary Olympians. And he now leverages that experience as an educator and consultant to get projects moving forward and leaves operators educated and prepared to run successful, efficient, and safe kitchens. And now I will turn it over to you, Chef Chris.
Matt, thank you. That was an awesome intro. Welcome, everybody. I am Chef Chris Galarza, founder of Forward Dining Solutions. And I'm really excited to be here talking to you guys about induction cooking. For those of you who don't know what induction cooking is, for starters, it's not gas, right? It's not coils that we know of, at least that we think of, that are slow and personally we all know and loathe. The truth is, induction cooking is a way of harnessing electromagnetic current to oscillate the ferromagnetic molecules within the pan to make the pan itself the heating element. So as you'll see when I'm demonstrating, put our hands all around the equipment. It's not going to burn us. Touch the handle. It's not going to burn us. So to Steph's point, when talking about children, they can come up and grab handles and not have to worry about burning themselves. So we work on schools that have pedagogies or teaching classes. We often recommend induction for obvious reasons, but also because it's a safety aspect that makes the parents feel a lot better about having their kids learn how to cook. So for starters, let's set this over here so you all can see that I'm working with a pan that we've had ice in. I want to give induction the worst possible chance of success here. So we're going to, not only that, put down a towel. So there's a barrier for the heat. So we're going to do, again, everything that we can to make this not a success. For those of you who don't know what it's like to be a professional chef, let me just, before we get started into cooking, explain a little bit about that. So when you're a chef in these environments, kitchens are very hot. We all know that. The amount of heat put out by these burners are insane. We have 30,000 BTU burners. If you have a wok in your kitchen, it's 100,000 BTUs. It's a lot of heat, and those are all open flames. So what that means, our kitchens are oftentimes in the 100 to 130 range. I can tell you stories about being a chef in Monterey Bay of Pittsburgh here, where I would have my thermometer, my chef coat read 135. And what that does to you as an individual is you are constantly trying to drink water. Yeah, Tess, she's freaking out over there. You are constantly trying to drink water to replace the moisture that you're losing, all the while having to be careful about the electrolyte balance in your body, because if you throw that off, you can get very sick. I didn't know that until I got sick. But all the while, in between these rushes we would be clamoring to go to the bathroom so we could throw up. So it's like we're running a marathon in extreme heat, working as fast as we can with things that can cut us and burn us and seriously maim us, all the while to serve our consumers food. But there's a better way of doing that. When we were at Chatham University, we did a study of the kitchen after it was open. And the week that we studied that, feel free to look it up. It's September 9th through 16th of 2019 in Gibsonia, Pennsylvania. It was anywhere from 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The perfect summer week, not a cloud in sight. It was, if you took vacation, that's the week you want to go. But in our kitchen, it never hit 74 degrees Fahrenheit. So we went from 135 degree kitchen to 74, or 72 rather. That's the difference we're talking about. And then there's also regulations that are coming down the pipe that are going to change that for the better. But for right now, this is the best way of creating kitchens that are going to allow us to cook and be comfortable while doing it. Because I can tell you from experience, when going into these spaces, you never think about being comfortable until you're in it. And then your mental health just gets so much better. We had guest-facing interactions that went through the roof. Our guest satisfaction survey scores. Our staff had less infighting. It was a much better experience, and we had no idea that it was because we were more comfortable. So let's dump this ice and let's get started. So before we go any further, this is I like to keep it an open dialogue. So if folks have any questions, we can either save it for the end or fire away. So what we're going to be doing today is doing some stir fry. It's just something really quick and easy. I like to start with like a vegetable oil, something that is high heat, grapeseed, vegetable, a lot of those stuff is really good. You're going to see, I just turned this thing on and we're already sauteing. And again, I just had ice in this thing. So it doesn't take much to really get going. A little bit of salt to help draw out some of the moisture. And again, cooking through the towel. So that means I won't have to clean up as much later when I inevitably make a mess. So we talked a lot about carbon monoxide and things of that nature, but I wanted to throw out another little stat for you all. Typical outdoor concentrations of carbon monoxide are anywhere from 0.03 to 2.5 parts per million. The federal standards dictate that you cannot exceed 9 parts per million, which means that if it reaches that level, the government comes in, everyone goes inside until they figure out what to do with the source of the contamination, figure it out, stop it, and then punish whoever made that happen. But when we cook with natural gas in our home, I'm going to back this down, we can far exceed 200 parts per million. So there are no current indoor air quality standards in the United States. So the only place that we can look to understand where should we be at is to our neighbors in the north, in Canada. And they say that you cannot have indoor air quality, you cannot have carbon monoxide exceed 10 parts per million in your indoor space over the course of 24 hours. And in cooking, we are exceeding that by a factor of 20. So when I talk about how sick we would get as chefs, I'm convinced it was less heat and more the pollution that we were putting ourselves in. There's a lot of byproduct that we're putting ourselves in harm's way for. And you can say, yeah, well, like you have the hood system up top. The truth is that we are still directly over top that burner. The hood is going to do a great job of capturing everything that's going to go beyond that. But we're still affected by all of that. And when we talk about efficiency, the gas range at best, we're talking at lab conditions, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 35% efficient. So for every dollar or therm of gas, you are not burning, wasting 65% of that at best. Truth be told, in the hands of a chef, we don't run the equipment like the scientists do. And in fact, we will be somewhere in the neighborhood of the 20s, high teens.
Hey, Chef Chris.
Releasing energy. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yeah. There are a couple questions for you in the chat. Do you mind if I ask them?
Sure.
Okay. One is, can you talk a little bit about the what kinds of pans you should use with an induction stove?
So induction stoves use pans that are able to attract the magnet. So if you want to know if your stove is ready to, if your pan is ready to go, grab your refrigerator magnet and put it on the bottom. If it sticks, you're good to go. So if you have cast iron, that's amazing. Honestly, it's easier to tell you what doesn't stick to induction, and that would be pure copper pans and pure aluminum pans. So that's really about it. So if you're a restaurateur accustomed to buying cheap aluminum pans, which truth be told doesn't hold up to fire, let alone induction, it's not going to work. If you love pure copper pans, they make copper pans that have a sandwiched bottom that is able to get hot with induction, and you can do that. But for the most part, most of your stainless steel, your all-clad, which is what I was just cooking on, everything is already induction ready because it's easier for these manufacturers to produce one type of pot as opposed to induction ready or not induction ready. So it's a lot easier for them to just have one type, and therefore most of them's ready to go. Any other questions out there?
And can you explain why you put the towel under the pot?
Yeah, I didn't want to make a mess. I, like most Americans, hate having to clean up the kitchen after. So it's nice to put down a towel and do something where you're gonna be making splatter, and just turn it on and go. And it's also to show and highlight how there are no thermal sources of heat with induction. So I was able to grab the pan with my hand. The towel was able to be on there without catching on fire, just to highlight the safety aspect of it. So more show, and also the effect is that I don't have to clean as much, less than its actual functional. Any other questions?
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between an induction stove and like an electric smooth top stove?
Yeah, so the way electric resistive works is you are taking in energy in the form of electricity, and you would then have to convert that into heat energy, which then gets to take its time to get into the metal. And then after that, once it's in the metal, it gets into the food. When you are cooking with induction, what's happening is you're having a tightly wound copper coil. You're sending energy in and instantly creating what's called an eddy current. So as it's going around and around, it's creating an oscillating magnetic current, which if you think of your microwave at home, turn on, it sends these microwaves into your food. It excites the water molecules, so they get all happy, they're bouncing around, they're creating molecular friction, which heats your food up from the inside out. We're doing that by putting by creating an electromagnetic field that is oscillating the ferromagnetic qualities in the pan, and thus creating that molecular friction. And because the metallic ions are so linear, we're able to get energy quickly in and out, which is why we're able to get something that is a frozen pan to saute in literal seconds, when with gas, we're much, much slower. I can boil water in about 90 seconds. With gas, it might take me about 4 minutes. So that's the level of efficiency that we're talking here. Now, there are other things that I would call myths that that I love to bust. The first is that you can't create quality food without gas. That's not true. In fact, the Culinary Olympics is all electric. The Bocuse d'Or is all electric. There are restaurants like Noma, which is the #1 restaurant in the world. That's all electric. There's tons of them all on the planet that high profile chefs are. In fact, most of the top 50 restaurants in the world use electric. Most new restaurants in Hong Kong are all electric. So the idea that you can't produce traditional cooking, like wok cooking or tandoor ovens or anything like that without gas, is simply not true. The truth is that if we were that concerned about traditional ways of cooking, we would be still cooking with coal and wood. The fact that our techniques were able to transition from coal and wood to gas and now to induction just furthers the point that cooking is about fundamentals and technique and not about your fuel source. So there may be chefs that say, listen, I cannot go further without gas. Like my recipes are made for gas, which knowing that it's an odorless, colorless top gas that we're putting out, in fact, you have to put chemicals into it to make it smell like something. It's kind of a farce to say that gas puts flavor into food. It doesn't. Your technique as a chef does. So the braise, whether on a campfire or your induction range, is always a braise. It's always a saute. It's always a bake. Those fundamentals don't change.
Can you explain? Yeah. Can you explain a little bit about how to decide what heat settings to use on an induction stove?
You mean like how high to put it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I'm training folks, I always have to begin by reversing the thought process. That you need to start high, right? Unless you know how hot and how much energy you need, I always tell folks start low and then ramp up so you understand how much power you're getting into. A wonderful example of that is our friends at Microsoft. When we were working with them on this project, they wanted to put induction walks in. So we worked with the company to develop custom walks just for Microsoft. And the chef said, I want as much power that I can get into that walk because he didn't think that induction or electric cooking had enough power. So the company obliged. And then when they went to test it, cranked it on high, and it literally melted the wok. Now, I'm not saying that your home or your restaurant induction is going to do that. Most of the time, we're looking at 3.5 kilowatts per burner or 5 kilowatts. If you're in the residential space, you're probably looking at around 2.5 kilowatts. But the truth is, it's more than enough power, and we are able to get more energy into the food. So your 30,000 BTU gas range, you're getting about 10,000 BTUs into the food. Your 5 kilowatt induction range, you're getting 14,000 BTUs into the food. If you go into Asian cuisine with wok cooking, that 100,000 BTU wok is only getting 20,000 BTUs into the food. The 12 kilowatt wok is getting 35,000 BTUs into the food. So because of that, we are, with induction, able to nearly double our throughput. So we're able to cook 70.9 pounds of food with this induction, as opposed to 38.6 pounds of food with its gas counterpart. And it's going to take a lot less time to clean, so I don't have to purchase harmful chemicals or anything of that nature. Hot soapy water is all it takes. You wipe it, you move on. If you spill cream, it's not going to burn on you. You just wipe it off. In fact, this is on right now, and nothing is getting hot because there's no metal on it, so it's safer. So if you were to pull off your pan and forget to turn it off, because there's no pan, it's not going to hurt you. So it's an additional safety as well. And,
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, there are also a conversation to be had about cost. That's one that everyone is always going to think about. Electricity, people think costs more than gas. Right now, well, there was a quick little study done where they just wanted to see how much, like a gas versus electric comparison. And there were some assumptions made. If you were running your kitchen for 360 days a year, 15 hours a day, and you had your gas at $1 per therm, $1 per 100,000 BTUs, or your induction at 17 cents per kilowatt hour, you would see a cost of about $1,123 a year to operate your gas range, and $1,114 a year to operate your induction range. Now, this isn't to say I'm going to save you $9 a year by going with induction, so spend the extra money. It's to really highlight the myth, truly, that gas is much cheaper than electric. The truth is that when that study was done, there was the national average about $1 per therm. Now it's over $2. So this year alone, gas has doubled in cost. The national average for electricity is somewhere around 14.5. So 14.5 cents per kilowatt hour. It changes depending on where you are. The truth is, electricity costs are a lot more stable than gas costs. That's just a fact. Gas is the infrastructure is failing. We're seeing. I saw numbers of up to 65% of the infrastructure needs to be updated and fixed because we're leaking so much methane. And methane, as we all know, is a greenhouse gas emission that is 85 times greater. That has 85 times greater of an impact on our environment than it does CO2. It just doesn't stay in the atmosphere as long. So these are true harms that we're seeing. And these are little things that we can do.
That's great. That's really helpful information. I wonder, is there a learning curve to using an induction stove comparable to electric and gas, or?
I'd love to say yes, because for Forward Dining Solutions, we offer trainings. But truth be told, it's super, super small because people know how to cook, right? It's intuitive to know how to cook. We know when something's burning. We know when something's too hot. too cold, we should add more heat, add more sauce, add more oil, whatever the case is. We can see when something's sticking and burning or not. So we don't really need a flame to tell us how hot something is. So once you understand the power that's in your hand, and really once or twice is all it takes, then you have an idea of how to cook with it, and then you are off to the races. I've trained staff, my own staff, that were not trained chefs. Some of them had come out of prison or were just, home cooks that wanted a part-time job, and they all picked it up super quick and super easy. No issues at all. And I'll also say, if there's any professionals out there watching, that America, we are about 30 or so years behind our brothers and sisters overseas. And when I talked about some examples of the highest levels cooking on induction, it's just to highlight how the international community has made this the standard that we test and we compete. This is the international standard for how good of a chef is. This is what they use. They don't have this person on gas, that person on grill, that person on saute. They have the identical kitchens, all induction, and then that's how they judge who's the best on the planet. So if that's what the international community is doing, we are still arguing about how to get a piece of metal hot, to see how far behind we are.
That's really interesting, because you do often hear that, the gas cooking is the superior form of cooking. And in fact, it sounds like what you're saying is that a lot of the professional chefs, especially overseas, are already really adopting this technology.
Yeah. It just makes more sense for your operation. If you were to walk into my kitchen years ago, before I became an evangelist, if you will, and say, hey, would you like to switch to induction? I would have said absolutely not. But then if they had said, would you like to reduce the cost of chemical purchases? Would you like to reduce the temperature of your kitchen, which reduces your overall energy consumption because now you're not using as much energy to cool down your building? Would you like to reduce the amount of waste that you're having, reduce all these things? Reduce your water, because like if I had a wok, that's about 1 million gallons of water per year I'm saving by going to induction. Then I'd say, yeah, no brainer, of course. Would you like to reduce cleanup time so that way your staff can get out faster? Would you like to double the amount of food you can produce so now your staff is now able to produce a lot more food to handle the demand of your consumers? And right now, in a climate in which we are dealing with historically low participation rates in the hospitality industry, these are all things that are like, yeah, absolutely. How do we do that? This is how we do it. This answers all of that. And it's crazy. And I always say, never listen to folks who are trying to say one thing will fix everything. But this honestly is one thing that will not fix everything, but will help tremendously in getting our industry back on track and reducing the pollution rates. Because right now, the number one cause of the number one polluter in any city is the building, is the built environment. San Francisco, 77% of the emissions come from buildings. New York is 70%. Excuse me, I'm going to skip over that word. 70%. So, and we know that the average EUI of a building, like an office building, is 30. We also know that the average energy use intensity of a kitchen is about 325. So the addition of a kitchen increases energy consumption of a building by nearly 10 times or over 10 times, which is going to be the biggest polluter of any building program. So kitchens have to be looked at in order to reduce the building emissions, and it also has to be looked at for the home, because if we know that childhood asthma, as Stephanie was talking about, is an issue, we know that it's a $50 billion a year healthcare cost for American families. We know that 43% of what causes childhood asthma is environmental factors. Why wouldn't we remove the pollutants that are in our homes? And that is the open flame.
Yeah, so I like what you're hitting on there is that not only is this a really great cooking experience, in your opinion, but really can be part of this overall effort that we know we need to do, which is moving away from these high intensity, high emitting appliances in our homes, which include cooking, and which we know is both a problem for indoor air quality, but then also ultimately the other gas burning and fossil fuel burning appliances that contribute to outdoor air pollution as well.
Of course. If I can say one more thing, if you look around your home right now, you would probably see three things that are gas: your HVAC, your hot water tank, and your gas range. Everything else is electrified. So really, you're only talking about a couple more things to get there. You're almost there. Just a couple more things.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's a process, and that's what I always tell people. Like, it can seem overwhelming. It can seem like a lot when you look at the whole thing, but if you look at it as a process and you start to think about over time, what am I saving and how am I taking it step by step, that's how it becomes manageable, and that's how you can do it. Okay. Chef Chris, thanks so much. The food looks really good. I'm really sad that I'm not there with you to try it.
They'll be able to tell you if it's any good.
Okay. I really appreciate you showing us how to use the induction stove, and I think it's an option for people if you're looking at kitchen upgrades. The electric smooth top as well, they work a little differently than induction. You're not going to be able to put your hands on them, so don't try that if you don't have an induction stove.
Don't touch it. Rule of thumb.
Yeah. But thanks again, Chef Chris.